All right. So, hi guys, I'm Chaitanya. I am building Unifize, which is a communication platform. Think WhatsApp or Slack and add a little more to it with React Native. You can find me on Twitter, underscore another coder. Yeah, I hate the underscore. But anyway, so today I'm going to talk about fluttering your wings smoothly with React Native. Yeah, thanks Digvijay for stealing my joke. The pun is intended. Fluttering your wings. So when it comes to React Native or Flutter, when you think about technology to make hybrid mobile applications which will run both on iOS and Android, the first thing that will pop to your head is that it will reduce your development time by 50%. No, it won't. It definitely won't. This is the first thing that any founder will think, alright, I'm going to pick up Flutter or React Native, this is going to reduce my development time by 50%. That is definitely not going to happen. So today I'm going to talk about a few issues that you might run into when you're developing using React Native. So don't worry about them too much. Think less about the issues and think more about the mentality you need to form while developing hybrid mobile applications. So you have to think in terms of Android, you have to think in terms of iOS, and you have to think in terms of React. Not as difficult as it sounds, it'll get easier. I'll try to make it easier. So brace yourself, bugs are coming. I'm going to start off with a very tiny bug, which is for the keyboard. So if you see on the left side, which is iOS, I have 7 text inputs. I can't reach the 7 text input no matter what I do. But when it comes to Android, it's handled natively, very smoothly. And to solve that problem, there's something called keyboard avoiding view, which is provided by React Native. It's just a small component which you need to wrap around all of your content. So once I wrap that around my components, everything suddenly seems to be working fine. So you can reach the 7th text input very smoothly. But one thing you'll notice, what I've done here is I have enabled it only for iOS. So this is where your code base starts splitting slowly. Your code base for iOS might be a little different than your code base for Android, which is why your development time won't reduce by 50%. What your takeaway from this should be is that when you're developing something, you need to think in terms of Android and iOS. You need to constantly test your app on both the platforms. Similarly, a similar issue you might face when you're developing an app. The first thing you'll see is the status bar. So I have a small hello world on Google Pixel 2 XL. It's fine, not bad. I have hello world on iPhone 8 Plus. It starts overlapping with the status bar. And then we have the iPhone X. I have no idea what's going on there. So I'm just quit there. So this is the code for it. It's simple. We have a container inside which we have a content which has a text that says hello world. So it should work as expected, but naturally it doesn't. So what I've done is I've created something called a custom status bar, which is a component which I reuse everywhere I want. And once I add the tiny component that I've made, this is what happens. Everything looks as it was intended on each platform. So what's inside that custom status bar? This is it, that's it. There's a safe area view which is provided again by React Native. It's a component that will make sure that all your data, all of your UI looks well on every iPhone device. And the status bar, just to give it a color and translucent as false, which will make sure that my content doesn't overlap with the rest of the UI. So keep this in mind, safe area view, status bar, go back home, look it up. Next, let's talk about UI re-rendering. So we've spoken about Android, you've spoken about iOS. Now let's think in terms of React a little bit. So what is rendering? When a render function is called. What is re-rendering? When a render function is called again. Now that is an incorrect and a very incomplete definition of what rendering is. Please don't kill me guys, but just keep this in mind for you to understand what UI re-rendering means. We want our UI to re-render, but we want it to re-render only when the props or the state have changed. Other than that, it's just a bottleneck. It's a performance bottleneck when your components are re-rendering without them requiring to re-render. So if you see over here, I have a very simple app, which is just a button. I'm clicking, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everything looks fine, everything looks smooth. There is no lag, nothing at all. But if you see that extra data over there for title, I'm passing an empty array to it. What harm can it do? So there's this really cool library called Why Did You Update? It's for React, but we can use it in React Native as well. Again, take a note, why did you update? So what it does is, it will basically tell you why your components are re-rendering. So over here, when I start clicking the title component, it will start coming up in my console log. So when I open that title, this is what I'll see. Extra data property is not equal by reference. What does it mean? My UI has re-rendered and I'm passing it an empty array again. When you pass an empty array again, you're not passing the same empty array. You're essentially passing a new reference to another empty array. So you have to keep that in mind. An empty array each time is a new reference to that array. So this is when React comes into picture, and you have to think in terms of React. So what can we do to avoid this? There are very tiny things that you can do to avoid this. First is the pure components, which will basically just implement one of the React lifecycles for you. It's a very quick fix, but I wouldn't recommend it. If it works for you, great. Then of course, be careful about the props that you're passing. Understand that an empty array is a new reference, an empty object is a new reference. You can pass null. Null is not a problem. And then fragment your components. Whenever you're creating a UI, fragment your components as much as you can into tiny, tiny, tiny pieces. There's this amazing section in the React.js docs called Thinking in React. Read it once, read it twice, read it again and again and again until you completely understand how to build UIs, user interfaces in React. And of course, there's an amazing library by Facebook called Immutable.js, which you can use to create immutable data structures. What is immutable? Talk to me after the talk. And also there is an amazing library called Reselect, which is a Redux library, which you can use to create selectors on your Redux store, which will only return the computed data only when there is an actual change in the state and won't return it unnecessarily. So when you use both of these together, this has solved a huge problem for our company. So do look into it, and if you want to talk more about it, we can talk about it after the talk. So this would help you definitely with UI re-rendering, and it made a lot of difference for us. Our app went from being absolutely unusable to absolutely smooth. So please take care of UI re-rendering, and don't be scared when you use that library. Why did you update? You will see a lot of things in the console. Don't be scared, take it slow, go step by step, and don't fall into the black hole of trying to completely remove all the re-renders, because that's not going to happen and you'll just end up wasting a lot of your time. So be careful with it. It's a very, very dangerous weapon. Next thing I'm going to talk about is UI inconsistencies across different devices. So all of these devices have different DPIs. So you might have heard DPI, this term throwing around in every unboxing video. So what DPI is, it's density independent pixels. What it means, we'll talk about it later. So right now, what you need to keep in mind is when you specify something like a font size or a width or a height, you're essentially giving it a DP, 40 dp, 300 dp, which is a pixel. 1 dp is 1 pixel, no matter what your DPI is. It's independent of the density. So the one on the top is unscaled, the font as well as the purple line. The one on the bottom is scaled, the font as well as the purple line. The only difference between the two is, this is the one unscaled and this is the scaled. The only difference is the font size, the width and the height. I'm passing functions like vertical scale, scale. I don't know what that is. So we'll look what that really is. So, and this affects everywhere. If you see, I have an iPhone, an iPhone X and an iPad. The difference is huge the bigger you get with your screens. The same goes for Android. The bigger you go with your screens, the difference becomes very evident. So what were those functions, scale and vertical scale? So what I've done is I've taken a guideline base and width, base height and width, which is 350 by 680, and then I've applied this really tiny formula to understand what a scaled width and scaled height is. You don't really need to look into this formula right now. You can ignore it for now. There's this really cool library again called React Native Size Matters. You can look into that. You can use that, or you can come up with your own algorithm to figure out the scaling in React Native. But you have to keep in mind that this scaling will happen and you might run into issues. So this doesn't seem like a huge problem when you just look at the two purple lines. So to make it more evident, I've created this small UI for you. Welcome to Geeky Ants, and you can clearly not read the text, but that's fine. Hi, today something, a text and a button, a text button, a text button. The idea was to have a button in the center. I'm not using flex, I'm just using margins and paddings. So the idea was to have a button in the center, but that idea clearly didn't go well when it came to iPad. So if I want something to look exactly like this on every device that I use, which might not always be the case, your use case might change. Your designer might want your app to look different on different devices. But if you have a use case where you want it to look similar on every device, then you definitely need to take this into consideration. And this is the same behavior for Android. It looks really weird on the tablets. So this is how it looks like once it's scaled on iOS. Everything is readable, everything is consistent across every device. This is how it looks like on Android. Everything is readable, consistent. And I've created a GIF for you to see so that you understand the major difference between unscaled and scaled views and how they can affect your app. So if you have a use case like this where you want your things to look exactly the same on every device, then you definitely need to consider what a DPI is and how it affects your UIs. And the same with Android, it will start looking much better and the way you intended when you apply all of these things. So the next thing I want to talk about is, don't start throwing rocks, don't start kicking me already, is type checking. So I know a lot of people are against type checking, and a lot of people, how many React developers are here? Like pure web developers? Yeah, okay, cool. So all of you guys might already have chosen sides what you want, if you want Flow or TypeScript. So these are two static type checkers which you can use to force type checking on JavaScript. We already have that in Flutter out of the box, type checking. We don't have it in React Native. So I would recommend you to do this so that you don't break your own code or your colleagues don't break your code. So definitely look into type checking. Whatever you use, it doesn't matter. We use Flow, but for some reason the entire developer community has a New Year resolution to move from Flow to TypeScript. So, and React Native internally also uses Flow. So also keep that in mind. So these are the issues that I have faced, and I found solutions for them. If you have different solutions for them, then you can tell me about it. One thing I'm going to talk about now is a problem that I don't have a solution for. And I would definitely love to get your help on it. And I would love to know if you guys face this problem and how we can go ahead to make this problem disappear. It's push notifications. So push notifications on iOS is amazing. How many of you have had problems with push notifications? Just a quick poll. Oh, 1, 2, 3, great, amazing. At least someone can understand this pain. So Android introduced something called Doze. So what Doze does is it puts your phone in an idle state when you're not using it, which is great. It saves a lot of battery. I love that feature. I was absolutely a huge fan of the Doze feature. The best part was that you can wake your device from Doze. If you send an FCM message with a priority as high, you can wake your device from Doze mode, which is great. Because we are a communication platform, we are a chat application. We want to send our messages on time and get it delivered on time. So we can wake it up from Doze, no problem at all. But that didn't last long. Google came up with something new called App Standby Buckets. So what App Standby Buckets is, your apps will get divided into 4 buckets: active, working set, frequent, rare. Also keep in mind, this is for React Native and Flutter and native Android for all of us. This is a problem for all of us. It will start dividing your apps into these 4 buckets. The further down you go, the more restrictions they'll add to your app. So when it comes to push notifications, the further down you go, your apps will stop receiving push notifications entirely, no matter what you do. So even if you send a payload with the priority as high, if the user doesn't interact with it, and by interact I mean doesn't click on it and open the app, not only just swipe it away, your app will start going down the buckets and you will start facing problems. So this is a huge problem that we are currently facing, and it's not just us, it's Slack, it's LinkedIn, it's Flock. Everybody's facing this problem. All of them have a FAQ section on how to implement workarounds. And there's this really cool website called Don't Kill My App, which shows you all the OEMs which add their own code on top of the Android code to make it worse. So I have a OnePlus device and I know what they do. And if you can go to this website, check it out. You can go inside each and every OEM to see what they do to minimize your notifications. And the best part is they have this tiny section at the end which says solution for developers. What we as developers can do to fix this problem. And you know what that section looks like? That's it. That's it. We can't do anything about it. So if you have a solution for it, or if you have any idea on how to do this, then please let me know. I want to talk about the future of React Native. We already had it covered, so you guys know what the bridge is, and we are burning down the bridge, which means that React Native is going to get much faster and it's going to be much more amazing. So keep your eye out, try to understand what the future of React Native is when you're trying to choose a technology for your own project or your own company. And the one thing that really bothered me about React Native is the rich dad, poor dad factor. The rich dad is Google, the poor dad is Facebook. I'm not saying Facebook is poor. I'm just saying that the way Google is supporting Flutter, it's not the same way Facebook is supporting React Native. Google is treating Flutter as a product and they're going all at it. Facebook is treating it as a technology which they're using internally. There was a Q&A I think 2 days before with the React Native core team, and they said that Facebook is internally using it and it's been going great and they will continue supporting it. But the good thing about React Native, also about Flutter, is that it's fine even if we have a poor dad, we have rich friends, which means we have an amazing community of developers who are supporting React Native full time. So I'm going to leave you with a question and my perspective of the answer. Is Flutter better than React Native?
Yes.
Yes? No? Louder, is Flutter better than React Native?
Yes.
Okay, so my answer to that is that I don't know and I don't care. Because this question is the only thing that matters. Is Flutter better than React Native? Because this sparks a rivalry between Flutter and React Native. And we've seen such rivalries before. We've seen Mac versus Windows. We've seen Android versus iOS. Messi versus Ronaldo. Ronaldo's clearly better, but anyway, moving on. We've seen these rivalries. And what we know is that these rivalries help the competitors evolve and this competition stay alive. So the only way Flutter and React Native will grow is if this rivalry is there, this competition is there. But the best part about this competition is that we don't just need to sit back and look at it, we can actually do something about it. What can we do about it? Open source contribution. So you can go back home and you can start contributing to React Native and to Flutter. You don't necessarily need to contribute to the core of React Native or Flutter. You can start with some tiny libraries. I think the first contribution I made was to React Native Maps, which is a React Native library. And that meant a lot to me because that was a used library for me. And that boosted me a lot. But after that, nothing really happened. The last contribution I did was to this checkbox library, which was basically just a null check. And that's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how big of a contribution you make. All that matters is that you're contributing to it. And for all we know, one of the future React Native core or Flutter core contributors is sitting right here with us today. So don't be afraid to make a PR. Go ahead, make a PR. This is not a bar. She's not going to throw her drink in your face. I'm not saying that happened to me. It's hypothetical, completely no resemblance with real life. But don't be afraid. Go ahead, make a PR. The worst thing that can happen is your PR will get rejected. Go ahead with it because you're not the developer we deserve, but you're the developer we need. Thank you guys. You can find me on Twitter @_anothercoder, and I've added a few links for you to take a look at. Thank you.